Well, we have fun with the kids, and we have fun in coming to understand what this manger is all about. Because it is such a special thing in our lives, we gather every Christmas Eve to tell it once again, the new story of the old story, of the new understanding of the old message, and the time of being together at Christmas with family, friends, neighbors, cousins. I was reading in the Star Tribune today or yesterday that Christmas is the most well-attended service in all of Christendom, and that it is becoming more and more attended because people are going to church less and less. And so they come together on Christmas Eve because they like it. And they have that fellowship even if they don't go to church during the year, on Sundays or Wednesdays or Saturday nights or whatever. So they come together on Christmas Eve. The thing about Christmas Eve is that oftentimes we all have been so rushed, and that we have been trying to put together the Christmas packages and the food and getting the house ready, that we come to Christmas Eve and we can sit here and just be, I can't wait till it's over, And we get a little nervous and we get a little bit beside ourselves and we get forgetful. And it's like the husband and wife who went to the mall because the wife had gotten him to promise that this year he was going to go shopping with her and he was going to stay by her side, stay with her, and actually help pick out the presents. And so they go to the mall and they're walking down around the mall and get to the first store and she turns around and he's gone. And it just makes her so angry that he promised he was going to be here, and now the first store, he's gone. So she pulls out her cell phone and dials his number, and he answers, and she said, "Where are you?" And he said, "Well, honey, you remember the other day when we went by that jewelry store?" "Yes, I remember." Said, "You remember that beautiful necklace that we just couldn't afford at the time we saw it, and we said that someday when we can, we're going to buy that necklace?" "Yes, sweetie, I remember that." He said, "Well, I'm at the Home Depot next door." Things don't always turn out the way we hope they will, even on Christmas. And that's an important thing to keep in mind because we so often have great hopes and great expectations for Christmas. I remember as a child, my favorite thing to do was to crawl under the Christmas tree and be surrounded by lights that were blinking and color and all these things, And you get back in the day when you could unscrew one and they all went out. And you could screw it back in and they'd come up. Off. But we all have the things that make us excited to be getting closer to Christmas, and we have all of these fantasies and hopes because in our culture, we put a lot of stress on families. We put a lot of stress on being together as families. We put a lot of stress on how that looks. And not just that we're together, but how that looks. And, we all want the Norman Rockwell picture of the goose and the family dressed perfectly coiffed, and the magic of family comes together. But that doesn't always work. It doesn't always work because sometimes families haven't spoken to each other for several years. Sometimes families haven't been together for months. Sometimes families get together and they yell and scream at each other. Sometimes families get together and it is so hard because it reminds them of someone who has passed away. Getting together at Christmas time isn't all that our culture wants us to think it is. And that's where the true message of Christmas comes to play. You see, with this baby that was born in the manger, it doesn't take wise men that have to be dressed this way and look this way. It doesn't take a Virgin Mary who is sitting there perfectly clean after she's traveled for weeks and given birth to a baby in a stall in a stable, but she's perfectly coiffed and clean and her nails are done. It doesn't take that. And it doesn't take gifts, perfect gifts that everybody wanted. And it doesn't take the big meal or the food. What it takes is people who choose to be together. To be together. People who choose to be together. To be together. Because we can't always make our kids come home for Christmas. We can't always make our parents stop fighting for Christmas. We can't always make Grandma quit picking on Dad. But what we can do is when we choose to get together with the people we love and want to be with, we can let them into our hearts. And we can remember this Christ child born in a manger. And we can let that love into our hearts and back out of our hearts as we understand the true meaning of Christmas. It's not about how many people you have at dinner, even though that's what we like to talk about after Christmas or Thanksgiving. I had 75 at my house. You know, I had 5 that really loved each other. I had 2 that just really wanted to be there, and I didn't even know they were coming. But they came all that way to be with me. That's what we want for Christmas. We want to be surrounded by people who want to be with us. Grandpa was staying at his daughter's house for Christmas, and the daughter was in the kitchen putting the last trims on the dinner. Now, I don't want you to think that I'm sexist because all these jokes go this way, okay? But the daughter happened to be in the kitchen cooking, and Grandpa heard the young grandson crying in his room. Crying, and yelling, until finally Grandpa, seeing that the daughter isn't going to go in, Grandpa goes in, and as soon as the child sees Grandpa, he stops and holds his arms up and says, "Grandpa, out, Grandpa, out." And just as Grandpa was going to go over and pick him up out of the playpen, the daughter comes in. She looks and says, "Sammy, you know you're being punished. So no, you're not getting out of that playpen, and Grandpa isn't going to take you out either, right?" And she turned around and leaves. Well, that put Grandpa in a terrible situation. Because now, Grandpa had to decide, am I going to really support my daughter and back her up, or am I going to disappoint my grandson? Or if I take him out, then I'll be in trouble. And so finally, Grandpa just walked over to the grandson, lifted his leg, and stepped into the playpen and sat down, and the two were very happy. What would it be like if we had always had a grandpa or a grandma that would climb into any situation we find ourselves and pick us up and just hold us and say, the world's going to be better because we're here together? What would it be like to have that grandpa or grandma who would always listen to us when we were in trouble or couldn't figure things out, and we felt like life wasn't worth it, that they would come in, put their arms around us, and remind us that we are loved. Beyond all measure, we are loved. If you can think of some people like that in your life, I hope that within the next day or two, you will go hug them and hold them and let them know that they are loved. Because the true meaning of Christmas is that Jesus has come. Jesus has come. Let's let that one thing make a difference in our lives. Amen.